It's apparent by now that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is at the very least actively considering a complete occupation of Gaza, abandoning any pretense that Gazans should have any right to govern themselves. As the Wall Street Journal reports, quote, domestic media in recent days has been floating suggestions that Netanyahu has already decided to take control of Gaza entirely, despite the opposition of the chief of staff of the country's armed forces. Since day one of this administration, President Trump's posture toward Netanyahu's government is that it can effectively do whatever it wants with to the Palestinians with impunity, whether that is illegally annexing the West Bank or continuing what an increasing number of Jewish scholars of the Holocaust and genocide are calling a genocide in Gaza. Trump literally said as much yesterday.
Would you support Israel reoccupying all of Gaza, as has been suggested by some Israeli officials?
Well, I don't know what the suggestion is. I know that we are there now trying to get people fed. So that's what I'm focused on. As far as the rest of it, I really can't say. That's going to be pretty much up to Israel.
It's going to be pretty much up to Israel. Senator Chris Van Hollen is a Democrat of Maryland. He sits on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, where he's called for the United States to end its support of private contractors in Gaza and allow UN groups to resume distributing aid. He joins me now. Senator, good to see you. Thank you for being with us. Donald Trump said he didn't really know what was going on. About a week and a half ago, he was in Europe, in Scotland, where when asked about starving children, he said, you know, I wish people would thank us for the work we've done there. And in fact, this idea of occupying Gaza, which was not in mainstream Israeli politics at all, started with Donald Trump. He's the one who said it. He talked about making beachfront properties and all this. So, you know, American presidents have deferred to Israel in the past. That part's not new. This is new, the way we're doing it.
Well, Ali, you're right. This would be a complete blank check to Prime Minister Netanyahu and the most extreme right-wing elements in his government, people like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich. As you indicated at the beginning, this idea of reoccupying Gaza is opposed by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF. It's opposed by the hostage families. It's supported by the most far-right elements that want Israel to essentially take over Gaza and ultimately also take over the West Bank. And what Donald Trump is doing is not only providing a blank check, but he's making America complicit in this effort. He says he wants to feed starving people. I wish he would start doing something about it, like telling the Netanyahu government to allow the UN distribution system to begin again. There's plenty of food at the border to feed everybody in Gaza now if we just let the food in.
Yes, it's not an actual naturally occurring famine. There's food all around Gaza. It can't get in. If it could get in, the most efficient way to get in would be by truck. But we're doing everything else. There's airdrops going on. There's this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation that has 4 sites to deal with 2 million people, which got a little whitewash the other day from Steve Witkoff and Mike Huckabee visiting it. You've asked Secretary Marco Rubio to deal with this, to get the American contractors out of the way and get back to a proper food distribution system.
Well, that's right. This has become a death trap. As you said, there are just 4 sites. It used to be 400 distribution sites. So when you have 4 sites, you have thousands of people who are starving, crowding together, and they don't all get the food they need. And in the process, they're actually being shot. Over 1,000 Palestinian civilians have been killed. So we need to end that mercenary private organization system that some people are making money off of, by the way, and get back to the UN system. But as you say, Ambassador Huckabee and Steve Witkoff went in there and gave it all a whitewash. And today there are reports that Donald Trump's talking about doubling down on this to expand it and to expand U.S. taxpayer support for this, which, Ali, at the end of the day, we are subcontracting out American foreign policy to Netanyahu's plan to reoccupy Gaza.
You've been pretty consistent on this the whole time. I will say there's been something of a shift in political opinion in Washington. People who otherwise were sort of quieter about this or didn't state an opinion on the matter are coming out and saying this is really bad and needs to stop. And certainly America has the ability to influence the outcome of what happens between Israel and Gaza and the Palestinians, and they should.
Well, that's right. I wish it didn't take over 60,000 Palestinians being killed, including half of them women and children, and people literally starving to death, to wake up a lot of people in Washington, D.C. But we should now act with urgency. And what the problem with the Trump position is, he admits that he sees starving people. I mean, Netanyahu doesn't admit that. Trump does. I'm glad he admits that. But he is not doing what he needs to do to make sure that those people begin to be fed, which is just to publicly call upon Netanyahu to let the international UN operation resume. And as you say, allow us to get back to, the kind of food delivery across the borders that we need to feed people, not these airdrops, which are just, drops in the bucket compared to the need.
And you do that when you're dealing with enemy territory, where the roads can't work, but they've got roads.
That's exactly right. Look, remember when, President Biden tried to bring in food by
the
sea,
piers.
And, we had this pier that collapsed. Now we're talking about airdrops. As you say, that would usually be the case when you have an adversary or enemy controlling the borders. Here, Israel controls all of these borders, right? I mean, with the exception of the Rafah crossing, which is adjacent to Egypt, but which Israel now controls. It's occupying that whole corridor. So it controls all of the borders. So it can let the food in. We used to have 500 trucks every day going into Gaza with humanitarian supplies and food and all of that. For months, there was a total blockade by Netanyahu and his government. Now you just see this trickle, and you see people getting killed as they try to get food to help their families and prevent starvation.
And they say there's a lot of violence in that.
Like that.
Yeah, and the Israelis are saying
right.
There's a lot of violence. Like, well, if you don't make food the most important commodity, if you just give people their food, they won't. They will take it and they will eat it, and there won't be fighting. Senator, thanks for being with us tonight. We appreciate it as always. Senator Chris Van Hollen.